I haven't heard back from John Minto or his charming wife Bronwyn, who said I was dumb and I talked excrement yesterday. Morning to you, Bronwyn. I'm sure you're listening in. And morning, John. I'm sure you're still hiding from accountability for your actions. So, look, we have got some really heavy issues to climb into this morning. I also want to clarify, and we're looking for more official statement on this. The story doing the rounds yesterday, I think Bob McCroskey noted it first from Family First, a story in, was it the Israel Times or the Jerusalem Times, in an Israeli publication, suggesting that our immigration officials had a new policy of asking tough or specific questions about people coming to New Zealand from Israel, from about their military service and where they served. The Department of Immigration or immigration officials here say not the case. The story kind of misrepresents their position and they want a retraction. They're saying nothing has changed in Israeli people are not asked any questions any different from anyone who requires a visa or is applying for one, though they note Israelis get a pretty pro forma tourist visa if they want. If they want to stay, I think, longer than 3 months, they've got to answer the extra questions. And, of course, they can't comment specifically on any individual case unless they've got a privacy waiver, and they don't. Can I just say I get the feeling that maybe the Israeli story has gilded the lily a bit or is mistaken in the way it's interpreted the New Zealand policy, and I am prepared to give our immigration officials, though they acted terribly with Candace Owen, they acted terribly with Avi Yemeni, maybe I'm not prepared to give them the benefit of the doubt. We will keep pursuing that and try and get someone on to comment about it from immigration, or indeed, gosh, Erica Stanford could come on and front up. We haven't had her on for a while, I don't think, Erica, but we'll give that a go. So there we go. And staying on the issue, well, of Israel, you'll note we have been very interested in this story because we think it's important, not just in the context of the conflict in Gaza, but also in the context of freedom of speech and the difficult line between hate speech and freedom of speech here in New Zealand. And I'm very glad to welcome for the first time in his new role to the platform the new Human Rights Commissioner, Dr. Stephen Rainbow, who joins us by phone now. Stephen, welcome to the platform. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Good morning, Sean. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. You, and I think in a move which, from my reading of social media and interactions I've had with others, was heartily welcomed by a large segment of New Zealand, and particularly Israeli and Jewish communities. You came out earlier this week with a very, very clear statement about the Israel or the genocide hotline that Mr. Minto has set up. And you said it must end immediately. Why?
I think it goes to the very heart, really, of how New Zealand is going to evolve in future, Sean, because putting aside the specific content of the issue, if we think that New Zealand is going to be a better country because we encourage essentially vigilante action against groups that we don't like, that does not bode well for the future. And at its core, human rights is actually about encouraging. If you think about where human rights and the whole international regime came from, Sean, it was essentially after the Second World War and particularly the Holocaust. And it was about encouraging people to dialogue, to talk through their differences, because we discovered that the alternative to that of war creates the most horrendous outcomes and creates an environment in which things like the Holocaust could take place. So the whole essence, really, of human rights is about people resolving their differences through dialogue and not through encouraging violence, which is what we feel the social media post did.
Now, that is, I guess, at the core of the issue. And believe me, I've done some self-examination on this. I'm a great advocate for freedom of speech, which in some ways Mr. Minto is exercising. What is it to your mind that tips his genocide hotline? And I mean, calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide in itself is silly, but I'll give him the freedom of speech to do that. What tips it over into what you're now calling vigilantism?
So I don't want to discuss the issues around the Middle East. I want to discuss New Zealand. I want to discuss the safety of people in New Zealand and what tips this over the line. And that's incidentally a view not just held by the Human Rights Commission, but by a lot of other people who are with a keen interest in this issue, is that when you encourage your followers to track people down and to let them know they are not welcome, it's very hard to see that as anything other than an encouragement, at the very least, for harassment. And if you look at some of the comments under the post, of course, this certainly confirms the fact that it encourages people to undertake actions that are potentially quite dangerous. You only need one person to act on that, track them down and let them know they are not welcome, for some potentially very tragic consequences.
Yet your press release this week says that the Commission believes that this is not a breach of the law or incitement to violence, and doesn't breach our current hate speech laws, which some say set a very, very high bar. Isn't it behaving on you, given the views you've just expressed, to at least test this and lay charges or bring Mr. Minto to book? Because I would also note that in response, he has kind of doubled down, and he isn't immediately ceasing this hate hunt, is he?
I think that we can approach these issues in several ways, and one of them is obviously a legal way, and I know that there have been by others approaches to the police, for example, about this matter. Look, the approach that the Commission is taking, and which I'm taking, is to make a plea based on simple decency.
Yeah, well, that's not going to work with Minto, is it? Or it hasn't. His wife called me a Zionist yesterday. His supporters are calling you a Zionist.
Yeah, yes, I heard that interaction, Sean. Look, this is what we've decided to do in this case. We're going to advocate for its removal. We're going to highlight the risks that it poses, and we hope that that leads to a successful outcome. We have a very strong promotion function at the Commission, and this is one of the things that this would be an example of, and that's the course of action that we're taking at this stage.
Could I ask you, would the Commission have any message for whomever the company is that provides the phone line that Mr. Minto is using?